Welcome to the Loud Quiet. Ooh, empty nester. Okay. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think that actually probably is the theme of the empty nest. What are we doing? Let's do this. Let's do this thing. I don't know if I'm recording. Yeah, I am. Okay.
Great. Sans children. Just us. We need a tissue box up here. Follow along on our journey and maybe, we can learn from others.
Yeah. I don't have a clue how to be empty nester.
This is the Loud Quiet, Living the Empty Nest. Welcome back to the Loud Quiet. Thanks for joining us. I'm Clancy and this is Rick. And we're so glad that you've chosen to come along again with us on this journey. This is episode 3.
That's 3 more than perhaps some folks thought we'd get to. So
it's 3 more than maybe we thought we would get to. I mean, we could just, set my first studio and just have it up here.
Fisher Price is my first studio up here. Yeah, no, we definitely are glad that folks have been listening. Want you to continue. We've seen so much engagement. Continue with the comments. Please continue with the likes, the follows, the shares with your friends. Not just because we want more folks to hear the show, but really we want to learn from more people. And the more of y'all that are contributing, we're already seeing it on some of the... Today as we're recording, Clancy had put something out there on the Facebook page, and we're already seeing some great commentary there and some great ideas coming from there. So please go out there, have a look, and let us know what you think, because it's fun to hear from you, and we're learning, absolutely.
Yes, we do really appreciate the comments, love the feedback. Love all the shares. Please share with your friends and family. We really do appreciate you guys. So I guess we can get into it.
That's right.
This week.
Because
this week's episode is, we titled it Routine-ish.
That's right.
Because that's what we feel like. We're back in a routine-ish.
Yeah, it definitely is sort of a routine. You know what? It's almost like the facade of a routine in many cases, where you're going about some of the same things and the same steps are happening. It just feels different. It's like it's walking down Disney's Main Street, but if you look behind, you'd see that it's different.
It is. I mean, everyone craves routine. I know when we think summer's here, ooh, no routine when the kids were younger, but we as humans crave routine. And yes, ours has stayed the same in some degrees, but has definitely changed, and probably more than it stayed the same.
I mean, you were telling me about this specific time of year has its own element of routine in it, where you were telling me, because I'm not out there as often, but all of the first day of school posts that you saw.
Yeah. I mean, that was, something every year that you posed them wherever they were at whatever time it was. Yes, because sometimes it was very early in the morning.
Yeah.
But yeah, you saw the first day of picture posts. Luckily both of our kids appeased me and have every year that they have been, or Tanner has done it every year. He's been in college, and Teagan started this year and sent their first day of picture to me. So that makes me feel good that, that they were still willing to do that for me, because it's for me. It's not for them. It's for me.
You wait when they're 30, when they're 40, they might enjoy it.
Sure, but...
It is, and that's a great example of routine-ish, in that it's what we are so accustomed to. And we got a little taste of it, right? Tanner was doing that when he was off at school, but now... There's no one standing in front of our door by their sports sign, as we've done for... Well, probably not decades, but decade at least, as it's always been.
No, and actually, I think every year has been by his fraternity flag, but not this year. He actually, took one outside of his townhouse because it's, it was a neat picture before he went off to class that day. So yes, I do appreciate that they are still trying to keep mom in the routine a little bit. But, we got back Monday night. Go
Tuesday
to work.
Morning.
Yep.
5:10 that alarm went off, and off to Bible study, off to gym, off to work, right? And it actually was satisfying to be back in that routine. Work notwithstanding, whatever, those sorts of comments. It was a distraction for that. At some point, though, this isn't a distraction anymore. It's actually our routine, and it's starting to feel that way. Last week when we were recording, it was all about raw emotion. I mean, I know I was still feeling it. You were still feeling it. At times I felt like I was in a daze, right? It just didn't seem real. Well, now we're sitting here talking to each other, and it is that routine. Been at work for a week now. And doing the rhythms of commuting and everything that involves.
Yeah. I mean, my routine stayed, pretty much the same. I went to work. I went to the grocery store. Now, my cart looked like some sad single person's because there wasn't much in it, because to feed 2 people is totally different than to feed 4 and one a college boy.
Yeah.
I mean, that was I could not believe how little I had in my cart.
Yeah.
And came home, it didn't take me 4 trips to unload everything.
You're like walking in with 3 bags. I wouldn't hear for that.
It was just
it's true on
different.
the other end too. That question that you put on Facebook today of how can you tell that how do you tell people you're an empty nester without telling them you're an empty nester? For me, it's, well, the trash can was really light when I rolled it out to the street. There's just not even the generation of trash anymore.
It is just, cooking dinner. There were 2 placemats at the table. We had 4 all summer because Tanner was home all summer. Teagan has always been with us until now. And so, having only 2 placemats there, and, we could eat at whatever time. We weren't going on anyone else's schedule. We were just on our schedule. So
what I laugh about
whether or
that
not we want to be the early bird special, or there were some nights that it wasn't that early.
quite as early, but we are finding ourselves at the AARP dining time. We'll try not to continue that. That's, though, an example of it's the routine, but it's different in that it is 2 placemats. And yet, I'm sure that you and I both noticed it first, but I don't know that I really noticed it as much. I'm just filling up 2 glasses of tea, laying out 2 forks or whatever. That's now what reality is 2 placemats.
And one of our couple friends, Ashley and Ward, who will be on the podcast probably in a couple weeks, she said Ward changes seats every night. She said
I like that idea.
No, she said it drives her crazy. And I specifically remember Teagan saying, "Don't sit in my seat," when she left. So
I do remember that now. That is some inspiration. So there's an example of a tip that I do want to start taking. Even things like planning out the weekly schedule. We would usually sit down on Sunday afternoon and we would talk about, okay, so where does this kid go? And even if we were out of the driving days for a long time, but okay, so this one will be away, this one's working, all of that. We definitely got to experience that in a deeper level this summer. And now it's, I guess we'll record on Monday night and then that's about it.
Yeah. Well, and like we were talking about, I've seen on Facebook this week, the first football game is this week. And I'd just like to say thank you, Teagan, for graduating last year so that we do not have to drive to Texarkana this Thursday. or to Burleson next week.
Yeah.
So thank you. And I'm sorry to those of you listening who do have to do that. But, that was just another... Oh, okay. Yeah, we don't have to go. Yeah,
on Thursday okay. So I got to leave work here so that we can drive the 4 hours to Aledo or whatever that looks like. And again, thank you.
So it was as much as they're in Arizona, but even though they are 16 hours away.
I feel like we're still hearing from them from time to time.
They do still need you for certain things, which brings us to our text of
with
the week.
Kids.
Oh, sorry, we haven't worked that out yet. I didn't know it had a name.
It doesn't have a name. I was trying to do an improv, just trying to read what you were saying. So there you go. We're not professionals.
Only one of us has done improv in this.
Yeah, but I'm the one that screwed it up. So. And we're definitely leaving that in because
of course.
Maybe that's the phrase that'll be in every episode. Yeah, we're not professionals.
So this was the first one that I got. We were home But yes, it's from Teagan. It says, do you know where we put my jewelry box, by the way? I was trying to find it. Well, first of all, we didn't put it anywhere. I put it in her rolling cart, which she found it. I was unpacking while she was building shelves and that kind of thing. And then to this morning, it was, where's my rain jacket again? And I said, hanging in your closet. Okay, thank you. Yes. so they do still need your help from time to time.
Your tone when you read that, though, where's my rain jacket? Sounds like what you answered that very, it's in your closet. I'm sure in your mind it was like, it's in your closet.
She did not pay attention to the orientation. I guess I should have left her a map or a list.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I still want them to need us. We all want them to still need us. I would be very sad. And I've seen some posts that my kids not talking to me, pretty much cut off ties when they got to college. And no, I don't.
No, we've had very vibrant texting.
I'm very happy to help you figure out where your stuff is in your room.
Okay, so I want to remember this moment. And I want to ask you is that still true October 17th or March 3rd, if we're still feeling that way about thinking more about the routine stuff. There were things things that we were doing before. I used to play Zelda just about every night. And then I came to know that they were taking the Switch away, so I was playing Zelda a lot to try to get as much in. Well, now, it's a routine, but I was relegated to playing Paper Mario. So there's still the things that are routine, but they're different.
Well, sure. And I'd like to add, let's go for a walk in the evening. Well, great.
Last night.
But you can't go until 8 o'clock because it's still 100 and 400 degrees here.
You know what, though? There's a great example, though. That is the kind of thing that, okay, it's a routine, but now we don't have that structure that it can truly be that. Not that the kids, look, they were out of our hair in the evenings anyway, but it really was, and we're starting to experience that the choices we get to make are truly just the two of us, which it sounds, gosh, that sentence sounds so selfish. I think for now, though, we're probably trying to figure out how to be that kind of selfish again, and the good kind of selfish. And to me, that's almost a dating equivalent.
Yeah.
Like, it's a, hey, let's go for a walk together. And we did. And we had to wait till it was 8 o'clock. And yet we did it last night. It was great just wandering out there, sweating to death.
And I mean, that's, once we made it to our weekend, and this weekend we didn't have anything on the calendar, on Saturday, we just said,
hey,
let's go to Fort Worth.
And what did we decide to do?
Yes.
And so I assume, I imagine that most of the folks that are listening or watching know that Fort Worth is about an hour away from where we live. We live in Frisco, Texas. The Fort Worth is over there. So it's not a place that you wander to every weekend or whatever, but it's not this far trip. It really was hey, let's just head over there and give it a shot.
Yeah. And it was very pleasant, and, we knew some things to do over there. We enjoy the Kimball Museum, and so that's what we decided to do. It was inside, air conditioning. So.
It was part of the requirement. It definitely was. And so this is the outside of the Kimball that's here on the screen or on the video. It is. It's not an overwhelming museum. It's actually quite cozy. There's not a ton of space in there, but there's some neat. There's a Mondrian in there. There's some other really neat. Of course, every museum's got Picasso's and all
Matisse,
that.
Yes.
There's really, really wonderful things to look at in there. What I found so enjoyable about being there is just the peace, right? Even when this is outside, inside, we're not taking pictures inside. Just walking around the grounds and just enjoying how calming that is. Yeah, this is a picture that we're putting up here that is the waterfalls that are out there, and there's a grove of trees. It was nice to be able to have a weekend that was not all about go-go. Think about what a Saturday prior was. That was moving in. That was the just intensity of that. Here was a chance to just chill out and enjoy each other's company, sometimes with words, sometimes with silence, but no structure at all, just peace. I love that.
And it wasn't crowded. I mean, it was a very just ideal afternoon. We got to see, there was a wedding party there, getting their pictures taken before they went to their reception or before they went to their ceremony. I don't know which.
Weddings outside in August.
I
Though
know.
that party was dying for photos.
They didn't look real happy with their bride. But that's okay. It was still a neat.
It was a beautiful
It was
setting.
a neat thing to see.
They can Photoshop out the sweat beads.
So,
yeah. I know that I enjoy walking around and enjoying the peacefulness. I get a sense that you have a different objective when you're wandering around
Rick
there.
and I do museums very differently. I enjoy museums. I enjoy culture. I like to find the creepy pictures.
Oh my gosh.
and try to figure out which ones are the creepiest. And there was a tie for 2 at the Kimball. So
oh my gosh.
if you go, see if you...
Come tell us which one you thought was the most creepy.
There were a lot of portraits.
And creepy.
Yeah.
Well, watch my language. I don't want to get the explicit flag on this episode, but really creepy pictures. One was, I walked up and I was like, oh my gosh, that girl is going to end up in your nightmares tonight. And then this couple walked by and said, oh, look at that just darling face on that girl. I'm like, that girl is going to stab you in your sleep. She's going to come out of that painting and kill you.
For me, it was the 2 brothers one that looked like they could have been in The Shining Part 2.
Yeah.
I mean, I was ready for them to for blood to start running from that picture.
So I hope you're all enjoying the art history lesson that we're going to provide here in the loud quiet of the Kimball Museum. We'll tell you about the DMA next.
Yeah. So yes, but that's also, I mean, again, I can enjoy it for what it is, but we also like to make things, put our little spin on.
And that's always
those
been
things.
an element
And
of who we are.
Exactly.
And
yes,
that's not to try to get too deep here, but that I think is a key part of this empty nest thing is I always screw up the math, but it was, what is it, 21 years ago, 22 years ago, I guess 21 years ago is when we stopped being empty nest, or then we weren't empty, we were just dating. We were a couple. It was just Rick and Clancy. Then we became Rick and Clancy and Tanner, then Rick and Clancy and Tanner and Teagan. There's a lot of rediscovery that has to take place when you have a 21-year gap from that time. And not that we never dated or anything like that during that time, but just that kind of, not necessarily rediscovery, but amplification of exactly that. We go to some serious things and, well, sometimes we're not so serious, and that's okay. We're not rude. We're not interfering with anybody else's world, but we don't necessarily take everything as seriously as perhaps you're supposed to.
Hence some of the shows that we enjoy, which I'm sure at some point we will get into some of those.
Let's review what they do in the shadows. There's the high level of maturity. I love that one. But what do you do after a high culture? Well, it's time for a beverage.
Yes, and we didn't have to get back to worry about making dinner for anyone or making sure everybody was where they were supposed to be, so we could just spend as much time over there as we wanted and do what we wanted. Yeah,
I think actually the only thing that we actually had 2 things planned. We knew we wanted to go to the Kimball because it was air conditioned, and we knew we wanted to eat dinner. That's it.
Yes.
After the Kimball, it was, all right, let's go find let's find a cocktail place. We found a really cool cocktail place.
It was
Fort
really,
Worth
really,
listeners or Fort Worth goers,
Yeah.
check out
Thompson's bookstore. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not Barnes & Noble. It is, it's, I think it was originally a bookstore. It's the classic old school cocktail place. It's neat.
Really neat. Soft, plushy couches, nice bar to sit at. Yes, that was just a nice...
It probably turns loud later. We got there. When did we get there? We got there at
3. It opened at 3.
Okay,
but
we weren't there.
We weren't
at 3.
the first ones. There were other people in there before we got there.
I'm sure it gets great, but that was nice.
Yeah.
And this does show perhaps my age is I want to go have a good cocktail crafted by an intelligent bartender who knows how to make something good and have a conversation with you.
Yes. And yes, that is the one complaint, and with my girlfriends when we go out too, is that some of these places are so loud now you can't have a conversation. And especially now that we're getting older, and yes, we can't hear.
Oh my gosh, we sound so old.
Yeah, but it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to be able to, connect with the person that you're with, and if you can't hear them, then you can't do that. Now, you did say, how did you describe the bartender? what did you say? You wanted a intelligent young.
No, I didn't say young.
Did you say young? Okay.
I
Well,
didn't
she
say
was.
young.
She was young.
No.
But that
We're gonna
leads
go
me to
listen
my
to the tapes,
story.
but I don't think I said
No,
young.
But that leads me to
She
my.
was young.
Yeah. We had one of their crafted cocktails, and then I said, "Oh, you know what? I haven't had a Kir Royale in a long time," and that was Rick's dad's.
He really enjoyed that. It wasn't his favorite, but that was a
yes.
signature one that he would order when
Yes.
we would travel, especially internationally.
And so she came over, and I said, "Oh, okay, can I have a Kir Royale, please?" And she looked at me and she said, "I don't know what that is." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I said, "Well, it's really basic because it's champagne and cassis." And she said, "Oh." And so I showed it to her, and she said, "Oh, okay, yeah." And then served it, did a great job. Then she came back and she said, "Now, what's your name?" And I said, "Clancy." And she said, "Okay, now this drink is called the Clancy. So if you go to Thompson's bookstore, order the Clancy."
I love it.
And I love sending that text to our oldest child. Guess who just got a drink named after him at the bar?
So there, the enjoyment of the Clancy is going to take place at Thompson's bookstore. Yeah, okay, that does sound weird. Order a Clancy beverage. Let's try that.
That sounds better.
Try not to get the explicit flag again.
Yeah.
All right. And yeah, we wrapped up with a good Mexican food dinner. Mexican Inn, I think original Mexican Inn.
Mexican Inn Cafe, I think was this
multiple
one, yes.
locations. But that was just great. The whole thing, the whole theme of this was a chance to reconnect, a chance to do something, the freedom to be able to do that something.
Well, and I knew this was going to be our first Saturday at home. I didn't want to be in the house.
Yeah.
I wanted to be, we did our morning routine and stuff, but I wanted to be gone. I knew that sitting here all day or doing stuff around the house would just not be good. I wanted to, and let's take advantage of, the time that we have now to go do these things. So
I think, and it's going to be interesting to see how well, maybe I'll just say how we do that going forward, because it's not sustainable to, okay, so we're going to go to, I mentioned Burleson, or we'll go to Granbury, or start doing these Saturday tours. Well, that doesn't make sense. Plus, we live in North Texas. There's not a ton that's around us. It's not that you're, got things that are that close. Yes, there's weekend trips to be had with flights and stuff. So how do we do that? And what does that look like? How do you, I'll say it almost very nakedly, how do we date again, or how do we live again as a couple, right? The dating, the engagement, the marriage, there was that period before kids. What did that look like? Mm-hmm. And there's even an element of that did we ever really, really do that? Because both of us were doing some heavy traveling during that phase of our life. So this is a time that neither of us are heavy traveling. And so what does that look like as we be a couple in the same place at the same time without kids?
Well, yeah, and I think looking back at that time, we were working, you probably didn't have as much money as you have later in life, so yeah, we tried to find things on the weekends like that. And we were still with our younger friends. None of us had kids, so we would go out, those kind of things. But I think especially this first weekend, it was just so important to me that we have to find something to do.
Yeah.
We have to, and which leads, Sunday.
Oh gosh, yes, Sunday. Sunday is I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
No, Sunday, we go to church, but we've gotten into the 11 o'clock service because the kids were going with us this summer. Well, no way are they getting up to go to a 9 o'clock service. So, and 9 o'clock is pushing it a little bit even for
we have a disagreement on this, but I've
For
capitulated.
me.
I prefer the 9.
So I had already finished my one load of laundry, meal plans for the week before we even went to church. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of our after church, everybody was trying to get organized for the week. And all summer, every Sunday had pretty much been trying to get the kids something done for school. Something, Sunday was college Sunday. That's what we called it because that seemed to be when we would always do what needed to be done for college. And so, by 2:00, I was just like, I can't, I'm so bored.
You actually said
And
that.
I know, I
You
did.
said, I'm bored.
Yeah. And that's not saying anything to you. That's just, I've been so busy that I just was sitting in my feelings. I didn't like it. It was quiet. It was, I like I said, I had already done the things I needed to get done. And yes, some people would see that as a gift. Our sermon this week was actually on
About shalom and peace
about Sabbath and taking the Sabbath. But I can take the Sabbath for about 30 minutes. Then I need to get up and get going again.
Well, that was, to me,
So-
that was the first real, tangible feeling of the loud quiet. That it was so quiet that it was loud. And I didn't get there as quick. I had a few more things to do. And then by the time I finished those things, I was reading something. It was just, I was actually enjoying that moment to actually just have a quiet time to read a National Geographic. I'm backed up by a couple months because I haven't even had the time to read them. At the end of that, though, I think the TV had shut off. I'd finished the magazine, and it really was just so shockingly quiet in there.
I don't think we didn't have the TV on because EPL soccer was already
That was over.
over.
Yeah.
Now, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm ready for NFL to come back because that's,
Mark it down. I heard it.
I enjoy
What's
it.
the time?
I enjoy it, but that's a chunk that will take up, and we can get together with our
Friends
neighbors.
and
We can get, so
And this was a weekend we didn't do anything with other people too, and so
Yeah.
that was something that that will be a rhythm and a routine. I think we're going to have to discover, and not like I've got an answer to this, but we're going to have to discover how to balance that need for activity, the need for dating, the need for connection, all of that, with the realization that there's also a space to be still. And what does that look like? And I say that like, Clancy, there's a need to be still. No, I need that too. Like I need to know how to sit in that, because you have even called me out on that in the past. You're like, you keep trying to do something, or you're busy doing this or that. I don't do so well at truly just, heck, I plan our vacations sometimes that way, where it's just go, 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 as opposed to just the moments of, no, don't do anything. And that's a balance we're going to have to figure out, is the freedom to do whatever we want and the freedom to do the nothing that exists.
And that's what I don't think it was necessarily the lack of something to do. It was just that there was nothing else going on in the house, which is just,
We're
it's
used to
just
that.
different.
On a Sunday, there's even if it's not every moment, there's some question. Hey, blah, blah, you're yelling upstairs to somebody, or you got a question.
And I'm doing 4 to 5 loads of laundry.
Yeah.
That'll keep you busy on a Sunday.
You think?
So.
I didn't even get a chance to fold a load of laundry. Not that that's like, oh, yay for you, but yeah, it was one and done. It was gone.
Yeah.
So that is going to be our loud quiet, and how do we adapt to that will be interesting.
And that was my answer today. I said on the tell me, you're an empty nester without telling me. I said, I only did 1 load of laundry. Now I answered 10 questions about how to do laundry.
Right.
So
Yeah. Plenty of advice given about laundry. So yeah. And to certainly, even in spite of the text, we're talking about the 1% of the things. They're doing such a good job of adjusting, and the things that they're figuring out on their own, and all of that. So it is actually really, really good. Now,
let's
close
talking
with
about
this.
them adjusting.
Yeah, let's end with this.
And and the cat is going through his adjustment as well.
Was this Sunday? This was Sunday, right?
This was Saturday. No, this was Friday night because she called us, and she said, I said, do you want me to put you on FaceTime? Because she hasn't really been asking about him a lot, and that's on purpose. And she said, yeah, put me on FaceTime. The second he heard her voice, he jumped down and he rubbed. This is a picture. He is rubbing all over that phone. He could see her face. She's crying. I was like, okay, we got to cut this off. So
he was meowing back to her and all that.
So that was good, I think, for her. And I've been, telling her he's doing fine. He's fine. This is her baby. And
he is
so,
doing fine, as he is now.
Yes.
Found his way back upstairs. He was in here earlier. He's found his way back upstairs and has occupied that space. But it was a sweet moment to see him FaceTiming her.
Yes.
See him FaceTiming her. Did I say that?
Yeah. He doesn't have his own phone, and that was my phone that I was holding.
When does he get his phone?
Yeah.
Right? When...
But it is. We made it through that. We made it through the first week and weekend. Yeah. High five. So.
Well, let's enjoy another week coming up, and I want to end with that. I think that's where we should end that with the cat there. Certainly, again, reinforcing. We just love hearing from everybody. Please let us know.
Yes.
Hey, let us know what you thought about that, or how your kids talk to their pets, or how you can tell people that you're an empty nester without actually telling them that you're an empty nester, or just say hi to us. theloudquietpod@gmail.com. Yeah.
Yeah, and please also, if you have a text that your child is fine with you sharing, you might make it up on the text of the week.
That's right. These don't have to be our kids.
Yeah.
We'd love to see y'all's kids here as well. Well, Clancy, I think that's a wrap to another episode 3. We still haven't figured out how to close out this thing, but it's fun again recording another episode. I can't believe this is fun. I'm actually enjoying this. This is good.
Okay.
We'll just end with that. Yay!
Thanks again for joining us on The Loud Quiet, Living the Empty Nest.